Okay, so maybe today we'll have a little shorter shir. So, as we saw yesterday, we finished the fifth parak of Shemona Prakim, and that concluded really, as I said yesterday, I think is the main thesis of Shemona Prakim. Now we have some open ends that we need to figure out. Last parak, the Rambam gave us the greater goal of where we want to get to in life, and that is obviously the dveikus. In the fourth parak, the Rambam presented to us the ideal person in personality traits. That is personality traits are all balanced and perfect and appropriate. They react appropriately to every situation, and it's all the middle path and equally independent of any extreme. Now, this parak is titled on the differences between, the distinction between a chassid and a kovish yitzray. Right. So the Rambam here presents a conflict between the philosopher's position and outlook, an ideal, and Chazal's outlook. So this is where it's a very interesting problem. Right? So the Rambam presents something that the philosophers say and how it contradicts apparently what Chazal say, and then we'll see how the Rambam deals with it. I don't think today we're going to go for the Rambam solution. Today, first let's present the problem. The problem is like this. Omra philosophen. The philosophers say, Shakovish is Yitzroy, that someone who subdues his Yetzer Hara, his evil inclination, Afal Pishois and Maisim Toivim, even though that his actions are good actions, Harei Oisa Toivos by the Misav Masim Rama Mishtoiki Kalayim. Fu Misgaber al Tavos Apel Benigid Lama, Shem Oirim Oisa Elov Kachoisov, Vitavos Vitrunas Nafshoy. Basically, let's just say first what it said, then we'll read it inside. Basically, the philosophers have when they present the ideal, so they tell you that there are two types of people. There are people who act out of self-control. They do the right thing. Right? Both of these people do the right thing. Both of these people ultimately will act appropriately, and they will only do things that are the right actions at the right time. So both of these people, their actions, you can say, are equal. What separates these two people is that the first person is someone who acts out of self-restraint and self-control. He's a person that lives in conflict. Because his inclinations are still very much to do the wrong things, and he naturally wants to do bad things. He naturally wants to, let's say for the sake of our discussion now, he wants to steal. He wants to speak speak badly about other people. He wants to gossip. He wants to eat unhealthy. Whatever it is, right? So you have a person that wants to engage in inappropriate behavior or in even maybe evil behavior, but this person is a person that works on himself, and therefore he doesn't actually engage. He suppresses his evil inclination, and he does the right thing. So this is obviously a person that's a virtuous person because he acts. His actions are virtuous and positive and kind and good and all that. Fine. Now you put next to him someone who the Rambam calls a chassid. This is a person who is a worked-on person, and this person only wants to do the right thing. So the difference between these two people is, what are they naturally, I don't know if naturally, at this point, what are they naturally inclined to do? One person wants to do the right thing, he wants to do the kind thing, the good thing, he wants to do things for the betterment of other people, and he wants to do only the appropriate things at the right time. And the other person, his will, maybe he's even a monster in his personality. This person maybe wants to do every evil, bad thing in the world, but his actions are good. Now, which person is a better person? Which person is the person we should strive to be? What is the ideal person? When we put all people in the world on a scale, who is the highest person on our scale? The Rambam says there appears to be a steer between Chazal and the philosophers. Because the philosophers say that even though a person acts appropriately and he acts his actions are virtuous, but if his personality traits, if his, what we call the appetite of soul, is imbalanced and wants to do the wrong things, then this person is a dysfunctional human being. He's not the person we should strive to be. We should strive that all our natural inclinations and our entire personality should always strive to do the right thing at the right time. And if we find ourselves, and when we see someone who his personality is not like that, that person is second class. That person is not the ideal person. Now, maybe that person is not a bad person because that person engages in good behavior, but that person is not ideal. So let's see this inside. So the philosophers say that someone who has self-restraint, right? Ezu Gibor HaKovish Yitzray. So this Kovish Yitzray, this Gibor HaKovish Yitzray is a b'diavad. He is second class. So even though he does good actions, but because he lives in conflict, and while he does these good actions, he's inclined to do bad things, and that's what he craves, and he's inclined to do bad things, despite the fact, even though that he suppresses these desires and he acts in contrast to these desires, but and he only does the right thing, right? So that is, first of all, before we finish the sentence, that is the profile of the person that has self-restraint. That is the profile of HaKovish Yitzray. Now, what is the chassid? The chassid is a pious man, right? So he's a chassid. So what's the profile of this chassid? He is nimshach b'masav achamasham b'se'eres. He only acts out of what he's inclined and what his personality and what his inclinations are, and he only does the good things as he wishes, right? So here you have someone who naturally, at this point at least, naturally is inclined to do the right thing in the right time, and just goodness and kindness and Ratzon Hashem and so on and so forth, and he is, versus the other person that acts out of self-restraint. Now, says the Rambam, Haskamas HaPhilosophem, the consensus is among the philosophers, that is that the pious man is superior. He's Na'ala v'Shalom Yosef HaKovish Yitzray. He's superior to the person who acts out of self-restraint. Right? So he's second class. Why? Because the other person, right? The person that acts. So you have like this. You have the person that worked on himself to the point where his personality and his actions are all in sync. And that is that he wants to do the kind and good and correct thing, and naturally, that person is superior, because the person that has that works in self-control and self-restraint, that person still naturally is bad. He has a tremendous amount of sometimes evil, sometimes just bad, sometimes animalistic, debased, characteristics, and that is not a person that you want to strive to be. And the Rambam says, and the philosophers could even find a support for their position. And Mishlei says, Nevesh Rasha Ivsara. That is, that the soul of a Rasha craves evil. And it says, on the other hand, it says that a Chassid is someone Simcha L'Tzadik Asois Mishpat U'Mechita L'Pei Ha'Aven. And that is that that performing justice is a joy for tzaddikim, and destruction right? So a tzaddik derives joy from when justice and destruction is imposed on evil people. So what the Rambam sees in these two psukim is that obviously, right now, so you have the tzaddik versus the rasha. A tzaddik is someone who he has joy when people who engage in evil actions and evil behavior. A tzaddik has joy when these people are given their justice, and basically they're put in a position where they're wiped out or they can't act out of these things. Now, this is a person that derives joy from seeing justice served to bad people, obviously doesn't have evil and bad inclinations in himself. Because had he himself been in a position where he wants to do these things, maybe he doesn't do it out of self-restraint. But if emotionally this person is closer, to the evil people and to the people that steal a rob and let's say all these things, then a good day to him wouldn't be a day where people who engage in the action that he himself wants to engage in, that wouldn't bring him joy. Now the other pasuk is even more direct. The other pasuk says, the nefesh rasha ivsara, that the soul of a rasha wants and craves to do bad. So if we bring all these points together, then what's going to come at that the philosophers have a certain they could support their case from Mishlei, because the Mishlei seems to imply that someone who wants to do bad is a rasha. Now, even though Mishnah doesn't say that, Mishnah says the other way around. Mishnah says that a rasha enjoys, the soul of a rasha desires evil. Now, you could, and the Rambam seemingly does do that, says that vice versa, that it goes both ways. That someone, not only someone who desires evil, not only a rasha desires evil, but perhaps someone who desires evil is a rasha. Now, even if you can say that's not true, because you can have someone who desires evil that suppresses that desire, but still, he is not the ideal person. So now, position number one is the philosopher's position, and that is that someone who desires to do evil, and his inclinations are, let's say, animalistic and debased and incorrect and imbalanced and dysfunctional, call it whatever you want. That this person, even though he has self-restraint, and therefore we're not going to say that he's a bad person, but he's definitely not the ideal. The ideal person is someone who doesn't want to steal, he doesn't want to cheat, he doesn't want to, just the opposite. He wants to give charity and he wants to help other people. That person is a better person. That is position number one. And we see when Chazal talk about these things, they say that someone who has a desire to do averes, and he very much mamish is inclined, and he has strong desires to do averes, and he's a better person. Why? Where do we see that? Because it says, meaning. So the statement the Rambam brings is so the Rambam says like this, that we see in Chazal that a person that wants to do the wrong thing, but he subdues that inclination, right? That he overcomes himself and he suppresses that evil inclination, then that person is superior to someone who doesn't desire it at all. Because it says that so there's a few things. The first point the first place where you see that is the story in the Gemara Sukkah. You have the Gemara Sukkah that Abaye followed a couple walking, a boy and a girl, basically, teenagers, basically, it sounds like, who were walking together, and then they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't see that he was following them. They just, each of them went their own way, and Abaye was very, in the Gemara, it hurt him, because he said that he would have never been able to be to be oimed in that nasayin. If he had been in this position, then he would have done that there. And the Gemara says, whoever is bigger than someone else, if you are bigger than your friend, then your Yetzirah is also bigger than you. So what we see over here is that you have someone, a very simple man, definitely not someone near the level in piety and of Abaye, and still Abaye seemingly, this is his own confession, does not see that he would have been able to resist that person's situation. So the conclusion you make of that is, and especially when the Gemara affirms that, when the Gemara says the kol gadol mechaver yitzar gadol menu, so you said that the greater a person is, then the greater his inclination to engage in bad activity, it just gets greater with a person. Therefore, the conclusion is that the ideal person is the greatest Yid in Klal Yisrael naturally also has the strongest drive to do bad. So really what makes you an indication, not what makes you bigger, but an indication of a great person is a person with a great appetite for evil, a great appetite for to do averes. So that seems to be a contradiction. Is Abaye the person I strive to be? If Abaye is the person that I strive to be, and Abaye is a person that is inclined to engage in certain, things that are not Torah, so then the sort of that's number one. And v'lo dai b'zeh. Elo sha'amru, they say sheschar hakov shesitzer gadol v'yishay tzara b'kvisha yetzvam the from tzara agra. The from tzara agra means that the harder it is for you to do something, the more schar you get. Meaning that now the more schar we get, we're not only talking about more points on the board, because if we're saying that the more you get more schar, now more schar probably doesn't mean points. It means also that you get more schar because you're doing something greater, and that's something we should strive for. So now, if you get more schar for having a bigger Yetzirah, then the person that doesn't have a big Yetzer Hara, maybe he is less moral and less ethical. Now, he's not engaging in bad behavior. But if we're going to make an ethical scale, who is the most ethical and moral person in the world? Who is the top of the ladder? So the philosophers say someone who doesn't want to do anything bad. Someone, when he sees someone else's Rolex on the table, he's not going to want to steal it. That's a person who is, not only his actions are correct and pure, but his personality is worked out, and this person is an ethical, moral person. This is what the philosophers say. Chazal say, Lefum tzara agre. If it's harder for you to go by that table and not steal it, then you get more schar. And that if you get more schar, then that means that action, the resistance, the conflict that you have, that is more valuable. And therefore, you shouldn't really strive to be a person that is so perfected that you won't want to steal someone. Because the conflict itself is important. And that's actually, you can say, that what makes you an ethical person. Because if you don't want to steal anything, then maybe you just don't want to steal. But if you want to steal, and your ethic and your moral code is what tells you not to steal, then that's a person that's a virtuous person. And Chazal say, Chazal explicitly state that a person shouldn't say that I'm not tempted, right? The Gemara says you shouldn't say that I'm not tempted to eat chazir. A person should say, Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer, Lo yomer adam ef shilachel basa b'chalav, ef shilil v'shatnes, ef shilov ela ef shima'asev v'avish b'shmayim gozer alai. A person shouldn't say that I don't want to engage in Averis. No, a person should say I want to. Really, in my heart, my desires, my personality, I want to engage in all these Averis. I want to eat basa b'chalav, I want to put on shatnez, erva, whatever it is. I want to. But what should I do? The Eibishter doesn't let. Now, what we have to appreciate in these two positions is this is where we're going to stop. And the Rambam continues by saying that if you read these two things right, off the bat, they both seem that there's a contradiction, but there isn't. And the Rambam is going to explain why, in his opinion, there is no contradiction. But first, let's appreciate these two positions. One position says, one position is that what makes you a moral and ethical person is the conflict itself. The conflict, when Hashem sees you living in conflict, when Hashem sees that you want to do Averis and you want to engage in the worst activity, you want to be a serial killer, Charles Manson, I don't know what you are. You want to kill whoever it is, and you want to steal, and you want to do what you have the biggest Yetzer Hara in the world, and you don't do it. Every minute that you have self-restraint, and every minute that you are megaber your Yetzer Tova Yetzer Hara, like Lo'im Yargiz Odim Yetzer Tova Yetzer Hara. So every second that you say F Shiben, I want to steal, I want to eat a Yom Kippur, I want to eat chazer every time I pass by McDonald's, I have a Yetzer Hara not to go in and eat. But what should I do? Hashem doesn't let. Now, what that is, the reason this person is an ethical and moral person, because this person has a conflict and he chooses good. The question is, when you yourself, right, look in the mirror, you don't have a taiva to kill people. Now, do you get points for not killing people? No, because it's not. So now, the fact that you don't kill people, does that make you ethical? Not necessarily. If you would want to kill someone and you didn't kill them, that would make you an ethical person. And that's really not only where the test is going to be, but that's really what gives your morality and ethics a meaning. Because something that you have no conflict in, it's just, that doesn't exist by you. The philosophers, on the other hand, they forget about the action. They could ignore the action for a minute. And they just look at the person. Is this person, the disposition, the personality, the inclinations, the desires of this person, is this something we look up to? Is this something we respect? No, this guy's a monster. Now, could be this is a monster in a cage, or maybe it's a self-imposed cage. But he's a monster. He's not a human being. He's not a person who we should put on a pedestal. Now, maybe he's not a person we should put in jail, because as long as he didn't engage in these actions, then, he's guilty and innocent until proven guilty. But the philosophers look at his personality. They see his desires, they see his inclinations, they see what he wants to do, and in that he is an animal. So this person is a beast with a cage, with a self-imposed cage. And that's not something we should look up to, that's not something we should strive to be. And therefore, our entire life, we have to work on correcting ourselves and get ourselves into a pattern of action that's going to shape our personality to a point where our personality is we will only want to do the right thing in the right time, and anything else will be preposterous to us. And we'll never want to steal, we'll never want to cheat, and we'll never want to eat something we're not supposed to, not if it's not kosher, not if it's not healthy. We'll be be'etzim holy robots. Now, not mamish, but again, I'm talking about our personalities will be so perfected that we'll never want to do the wrong thing. Chazal seem to say completely to the contrary. Chazal seem to say, no, that we value someone, if you're going to be the biggest person in Klal Yisrael, you will have the biggest monster and beast living inside of you. And you will want to do things that half of Klal Yisrael won't even want to do, because they're not naturally inclined to do it. But because you're rising in your avodah, so what's going to happen is, because Hashem values the conflict, because really what's valuable to me is the conflict, naturally as much as you're going to grow, your conflict is going to grow with you. And therefore the end result is going to be, and therefore, if you put up a better fight, and your fight is always going to be elevated. It seems also to me that both of these paths takes you in a very opposite trajectory. Because in the philosopher's path, the more you work on yourself, the end result should be naturally, the natural logical conclusion would be that if you go down the philosopher's path, then the more you work on yourself, the more refined you become. And the more refined you become, the more your actions and your reactions and your personality become more in sync. And you're naturally going to want to do the right thing. And you're going to become a kind person and a good person and a balanced person and a moral and ethical person, inside and out. Right? That is the natural path of the philosophers, and that's what they strive to do. And that is the ladder that they give you to go through life. Chazal seem to contradict that, and not only they contradict it by saying that they want that the ideal way of going through everyday life is by magnifying the conflict, by telling yourself, I want to, but I'm not going to. I want to, but I'm not going to, is a person that lives in a constant state of battle. So we have no desire for you to get out of that battle. Quite to the contrary, we want you to idolize the battle. And we want to tell you that the more it hurts, the more you bleed, the better it is. And you get, not only you get more schar, but eventually you should say EFG, right? It's not that I want to, but the end result is going to be that you're going to live, you're never getting out of this conflict. It's not that this path is going to lead you to serenity and peace and to harmony. It's going to lead you to greater Yetzaras. And it's going to lead you to more conflict and worse conflict. And at the end result, you are going to have a Yetzirah that you didn't have at the start. So these paths almost take you into opposite directions, because they appreciate and they respect two very opposite results. The philosophers respect someone who lives in perfect sync and harmony and does good and wants good. And Chazal want you to do the right thing. They want you to do Masha Avisha B'Shemayim says, but where it really comes out, your commitment to Hashem. And where it really comes out, that you're a soldier. And not only that you're ethical and moral, that is out of conflict. Because someone, if you don't have a Yetzirah to go into a mall and shoot 1,000 people, you have no right to go to sleep at night. Say, I'm a good guy. I didn't shoot 1,000 people tonight. And that monster did. But you don't get points for that, because, you don't get points for not being the worst person in the world. And what do you get points for? You get points for where in your area of conflict, where you overcame yourself, that is where you get your points. It's not only, the points on the board of the Fumtzara Agra. That is where you can make the case that you're an ethical person. Right? I went out of my way 10 minutes for a hitch. That, because there you have a conflict. So, we're going to stop here. Just to appreciate these apparently two very, very different perspectives, not only in the practice, obviously, but in the ideal. What type of person do we want to be? Do we want to be a person? Are we striving? Shemona Perek until now gives us the impression that we want to be a person that our soul, Nefesh Adam, Nefesh Achas, is in perfect sync, and we shape and morph our soul through the Torah, through doing the mitzvahs. That's what will make us kind and good, and constantly only want to do the good thing, and by pattern of repetitive behavior and action, that will eventually be the final product. And the problem is, says the Rambam, that is maybe the philosopher's ideal, but that's not Chazal's ideal. So we have this steer that we need to work out, and Mitchell will work that out tomorrow. But for now, let's just appreciate these two very divergent, very different and conflicting ideals. Is the ideal a constant state of battle, or is the ideal serenity and peace out of a sync between your actions and your emotions?